Street. When they arrived, they found a 17-year-old with a gunshot wound. That teen was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. We will provide more information as it becomes available. And less than 24 hours later, police responded to an incident a few miles away near the intersection of Greenfield and 11th Streets. When officers arrived, they found a 20-year-old man suffering from a gunshot wound. Police performed CPR until EMS arrived, but he died on the scene. The victim's name has not yet been released. If you have any information on either shooting, you are asked to contact Wilmington Police. Protesters in the Cape Fear continue to voice their anger surrounding the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Several people stood on the steps of City Hall in downtown Wilmington yesterday. The demonstrators said the decision infringes women's rights to make decisions about their bodies, which they say is personal to the individual. In North Carolina, abortion is allowed with restrictions. Counseling is state mandated with a 72-hour waiting period. And a popular Wilmington restaurant shut its doors for dinner service this weekend after the historic Supreme Court decision. The owners of Ceviche's canceled more than 150 reservations to join a protest Friday night at Innis Park in downtown Wilmington. Owner Laura Tiblier says she closed in solidarity with those who feel at risk of losing their right to bodily autonomy. Tiblier says the restaurant understands cancellations were short notice, but wanted to use their platform to support women who were upset by the news. She says the restaurant's social media was flooded with positive reaction to their decision to close. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Monday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. First full week of summer, and we have temperatures in the upper 80s, low 90s away from the coast today. Most of the day will stay dry and quiet, but if you're headed out to the beaches, you may have to watch out for an isolated shower or two as your temperatures get into the middle 80s later this afternoon. As we head into the overnight hours tonight, a cold front begins to work its way into our area, elevating our shower and storm chances, with temperatures dropping down into the low to middle 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Our founders expected judges to apply, not make, our laws. I'm Trey Allen, conservative candidate for the North Carolina Supreme Court. More than 20 years ago, I began my legal career by joining the Marine Corps and taking an oath to support and defend the United States Constitution. As a justice on our state Supreme Court, I will continue to protect the Constitution by basing my rulings on the Founders' intent, not my personal views. Paid for by Trey Allen for Justice.
Teachers and parents, the North Carolina Symphony is here to support you as you carry on the education of your children and students. Take your kids on a free virtual field trip to the Symphony with a virtual education concert and companion student book. Go on a virtual journey to learn what makes music music, with music by William Grant Still, Beethoven, Brahms, and more. Access the free video and student book with password 1932 at ncsymphony.org/virtual.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to the program whenever you want, however you want, by asking for Big Talker.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. Sorry about the delay this morning between myself and the station. We're just not getting it together on a Monday. It must be Maniacal, or it could be the Supreme Court made a decision that just told my computer to just not behave. I don't know what it is. But the big news, the best news I have this morning is having Mr. Bill Moore with us. So you guys don't have to listen to me try and wake up with a cup of coffee. How are you doing this morning, sir?
Always good to talk to you, my friend. And, you know, maybe the bottom line was the Supreme Court decision aborted your show.
Oh, that could be it. Aborted the whole station.
There you go.
So I understand you've been on something of a Canuck vacation there, seeing the sights and enjoying our northerly neighbors.
Well,
enjoying some poutine.
Not quite. What I did want to just talk a little bit about is my wife and I had the privilege of taking a trip to Alaska. And unfortunately, on the way back, the day before we came back to port, my wife came down with COVID. and they isolated us on the ship. And as soon as we hit Vancouver, they took us off the ship, and they put us into a hotel room, which is, I guess, appropriate so she doesn't spread the disease, because I didn't come down with it. But Canadian law locks you up for 14 days, not 5 like in the United States. So we spent 14 days in a hotel room in Canada, not seeing the sights. And I have to tell you, they were, the Canadian people, the little contact I had with them, were really, really nice. However, the government was a little bit
overbearing.
Overbearing is a good word. The messages were not even polite. I mean, it was veiled threats. If you don't do X, it's a $5,000 fine. If you don't do Y, it's a $5,000 fine. And it was just an experience. The other thing I experienced up there is, God bless US TV, because I have to tell you, the most important show up there that we ended up watching was binge watching Everyone Loves Raymond. So, yeah.
I guess that's what you do if you don't have enough alcohol, is you watch that.
Oh, it was an interesting show, and I actually got so bad, who my wife is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, was watching Thomas the Train to kill some time.
Oh, man.
It was a unique experience. We are glad we're home.
I do have one question.
Nicely. Yes, sir.
Which do you think is better, the hotel food or the hospital food?
The hotel food was excellent when it was just expensive, but it was excellent. Have to tell you that. And like I said, the people that we get to meet, because I kind of went out a little bit just to get food to bring it in at night. Otherwise, I was locked in the room. And we did breakfast in the hotel. It was sent up to us. And the people were great. They were just super nice. Some interesting things I learned about British Columbia, where Vancouver is. First thing I noticed was
they're not British.
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, a great number of the people, I would tell you, the greatest number of people I met were Asian. And the population was just phenomenally Asian. And I did some checking on it because I'm the old history teacher. And I found out that the Canadian government couldn't get people to immigrate to British Columbia. So they opened up immigration to Asia specifically for that area. And in many cases, you'll walk around the streets there. Like I told you, I was walking around, or we drove in the bus at some points, and a good slice of the signs are in either Chinese, Japanese, or languages I don't understand. But the people were, like I said, terrific. The food was great. A lot of it was Oriental, and that works for me, not so much for the wife. But it was a unique experience. But the Canadian, learning about Canada and learning about Vancouver, because I spent a lot of time researching.
Not had a choice.
Yeah, it was unique, and I found out that they have their own issues with their. You talk about our issues with our own Indigenous people. Their people in British Columbia, there's still major discussions going on between their Indian population and the government, because they never quite settled all their land issues. So, and now the land is becoming more and more value as they find minerals on it. So it's a battle to see who controls it. So it's an interesting operation up there. But like I said,
in America, they'll just keep moving them off of the valuable land.
Right. Well, had that happened nowadays, that wouldn't have happened. If we were 200 years ago, it would not have happened that way here.
No. Now, then you come back to the United States of America, the friendly shores, sea to shining sea, waves of grain, and all that good stuff. And the Supreme Court drops one of the biggest bombshells since the beginning of time, and you just happen to be like unpacking your suitcase. That had to be fun.
It was interesting. And actually, there were 3 court decisions last week that had effects on our North Carolina population and the nation.
Oh,
obviously,
I only know the gun thing in New York and the big one. Which other 2 did I miss?
The gun thing with New York was not even one of them.
What did I miss?
Obviously, we had the Supreme Court decision, Roe versus Wade, and overturning it. People need to understand, though, that it did not ban abortions. All it did was return the right to control abortions to the states. So it's now a states' right issue as per the 10th Amendment. And each state has the right to set the rules for abortions and what's acceptable and what's not. And furthering, to prove what I'm talking about, if they had banned abortions, you wouldn't have states like California and New York and cities like Chicago advertising that we will provide abortions to anybody and everybody that wants to show up. We will help you have them. So again, it did not ban abortions. All it did was move the decision on the time if abortions can happen back to the individual states where, in my opinion, it belonged, not at the federal level. So that was one. The second ruling was also very, very misconstrued by what was said, because what they said was that the state legislature has a right to get involved in court cases where the attorney general is not representing the will of the people. So, for example, what this is specifically about is voter ID has been in the courts for a while, and the state attorney general of North Carolina, Josh Stein, has supported not having voter ID. So he really was kind of half-heartedly doing what he was supposed to do. And the state legislatures went to court to say, no, we want to control, we want to get involved in this lawsuit. And the attorney general sued him back, saying, no, you have no standing. So the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the state legislatures do have the right to intervene or get involved when the party in charge is not fully representing the people as they should be. So this some people are saying we now got voter ID back. No, we didn't. All it said was this now gives the state legislature a right to get involved in the court cases. So that's another one that can be easily misinterpreted. And the third court case that was out there actually was only at a federal level. It didn't make the U.S. Supreme Court, but it has a direct effect on North Carolina in that up to this court ruling, in North Carolina, if you were transgender and you wanted to change your sex on your birth certificate, i.e. then becomes your license, et cetera, as it rolls through, you had to have completed the total surgery for the switch from male to female. And this judge, a federal judge, ruled that that's not the case. You have the right to change as you want. So that this kind of put the court case in limbo. I think it was too early on Friday to find out whether the state is going to appeal that decision or they're going to let it stand. My guess is they will appeal it and it'll fight its way through the rest of the federal courts. But at this particular point now, North Carolina has been directed to allow any transgender person who wants to submit the necessary paperwork to switch his gender and get a new birth certificate without having the surgery, the final surgery for completion of the conversion. And that's something brand new.
That's something I would not have expected had you asked me 10 years ago what we would be ruling on in the Supreme Court. That would not have made my top 10.
This was not Supreme Court. This was federal court.
Or federal court. It would not. It still would not have entered into my mind 10 years ago.
But it's the world we live in nowadays, and I am assuming probably so that whoever was at the state of North Carolina will appeal that, especially now that they have the other Supreme Court ruling, which even if Attorney General Stein decides not to, the state legislature can get involved. And since they're the one making the laws, I'm fairly sure they will follow through on it. So, that's just a little bit of what happened on Friday.
And that was right after you got in town, what, Thursday?
Wednesday morning at dark 30.
And before you're even like a cup of coffee and awake and back to being an American and eating bagels instead of poutine.
Yep, pretty much.
And then you get hit with all of that at once. That had to be... It
was an interesting day. My wife is saying we need to unpack. She's not feeling right. I think the one thing I did learn up there is in Canada is in those hotels, I can't afford to clean my clothes with them.
Oh.
Literally, I had to go out and buy some stuff, and we washed out what we needed and hung it the night before. To give you an example, they had no laundry machines in the hotel. This is Hilton, but they did offer laundry service.
Oh,
now,
of course.
Of course. It was $4 to clean a pair of underwear.
Oh, they don't even do it by the pound. The place I went used to do it by the pound. You just throw it all in a basket.
Oh, I would have loved that part. But no, this was by unit. And at $4 for a pair of underwear.
You could buy underwear for that.
Pretty much. You just throw the old ones out and buy new ones.
Yeah.
But so no, we did some washing in the sinks and hung it up and dried it. We needed it. We had had to do.
Live in Appalachian style in an upscale hotel. That's awesome.
So it was an interesting run at this point. While we're talking,
Yeah.
you know, we're having an interesting show tomorrow night at All Things Brunswick. So I thought I'd take a chance to talk about that.
Please. I would like the update myself.
Yep. Well, you know, the last 2 weeks, we've had people on board, and I would tell you I was away, so it was not me. It was my other two co-hosts who've done a great job. They had people on board talking both sides of the windmill issue. 1 week it was everybody that was in favor of windmills. Last week it was everybody who was against windmills. And what they decided to do tomorrow night at 6 o'clock on live stream 107 or on YouTube, looking for All Things Brunswick, commercial number 101, what they decided to do is bring both sides together and have a debate. So Dan and Mary will be hosting that debate tomorrow night at 6 o'clock live, and you know, you can actually hear both sides talk about it. And I know they're going to try and keep the emotion out and just talk about facts. So it should make for an interesting discussion. And then next week we're moving on into small businesses and how COVID's affected them. So we got a pretty heavy schedule coming up, and I want to thank them for covering while I'm gone. And you know, like I said, I will not be there tomorrow because it's not fair. The last 2 weeks, these guys handled it, and I really didn't hear the other two groups talk.
They're gonna need an arbitrator or a referee. One.
Well,
and
those
if
guys
you have any first aid skills, you could probably you really should be there.
Well, I thank you for the nice thought, but the decision's been made, and I will be back next week's show. But I will be listening to them tonight because I know it's going to be tomorrow night. It's going to be a great show at 6 p.m. on live stream from this channel, from this station, and also pick it up on YouTube, All Things Brunswick. So it's going to be a great show, and we hope you turn in and listen.
It's going to be a blast. I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious when you said they're going to try and keep the emotion out of it, where a great number of the arguments on one of those evenings was incredibly all subjective. So I'm not sure, you know, because for me, the aesthetics of a view aren't as important as the safety and legitimacy of the project, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think an airport is the most beautiful thing on the planet, but if you need an airport and you design it to not be ugly, you sort of adapt and live with it.
And besides, you have to have a place for planes to land.
Right. And I'm not a big fan of skyscrapers, but we got them, and they don't look bad, so I don't see a windmill farm along those same lines. I don't see it as being so reprehensibly offensive in view, if that makes sense.
Well, the actual issue with that is first, you know, and again, and I'll get involved because I do know a little bit about this. I worked with some people up in New Bern and in the Northeast when I used to live up there, and they were trying to drop a lot of windmill farms up there. So when you're going offshore, these windmills will be so far out there will not be visible from the shore.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to be either really, really big or on a really big boat out there where you could actually see them.
No, you'd have to really be, you know, roughly 26 miles, the curvature of the Earth takes out what you're doing. So, you know, it's going to disappear out there because I believe they're right out in that proximate area. So you need to get into a boat and really go travel and due west to see them. You know, the issues there are, you know, beyond viewing, because I don't think viewing, at least from the shore point, is a major issue for these windmills. The issues that I find with them are more of what happens when they lose their usefulness, and how do you take it apart?
Oh, end of life, yeah.
And you deal with end of life. You deal with what happens if they need repair parts. How do they? You know, I assume they're developing them to last through hurricanes. But if a Cat 4 or 5 comes by, I'm not sure anything will last a Cat 4 or Cat 5.
Now, to speak to your, and this was the disposal conversation they had. Now, I'm from New Mexico, and if anybody remembers the Waste Industrial or Waste Initiative Plan Project or whatever it's called, WIP, where they wanted to bring all the nuclear waste from all the nuclear facilities from around the country and bury it in our sandbox. So nuclear, same idea. The problem is with nuclear, that stuff stays around and keeps being radioactive, whereas a windmill arm or propeller blade, can be landfilled like we do all the other trash that we generate as human beings. So I'm not really swayed by that argument.
Yeah, but the difference again with some of this trash is those blades are what 400 or 500 feet long. That's a heck of a hole.
Well, think of the hole they had to dig just to put nuclear waste away.
Well, to be fair about the windmill issue, when you start talking disposal or the end of life, up until recently, there was you couldn't recycle these windmill blades. You had nothing to do but get rid of them. Right. Now I have done reading that there is a company now that's come out with a blade that is recyclable. So again, how effective it is or what's its end life, I have no clue. Right. But I read that the industry is moving in that direction to their credit.
Oh, the technology and research and development is going to be insane if it hasn't already been. So I'm sure a lot of those issues will be addressed.
Well, I'm sure there are. And the other thing, when you're talking about windmills, offshore at least there'll be a consistent flow of wind. That's never going to end. The problem with windmills onshore is when the wind dies out, the windmill don't work. So there are, there are actually windmills around this country that have a backup diesel generator or gas generator to turn them so they generate the electricity to support whatever they're supporting with electricity, which is kind of counterproductive. It's like having an electric car and then plugging it in at home and using, 8 hours of fossil fuel to charge it.
Well, I do have a solution to a good chunk of this, is if we were to install a wind farm up and down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., we would never be without hot air moving those turbines.
Well, yeah, there's another thing, too. If they could develop an energy source that would run on crap, if you put it in the same place, it would have an end-to-ending supply of ration for the nation. It could do it right out of that area.
They did that in Back to the Future, the Mr. Fusion.
Yep.
So, yeah, we need a Mr. Fusion, Mr. Political Fusion there.
And I would tell you, that's corridor between the White House and Congress could support the nation.
Yeah. And then, so while in Canada, did you feel a difference, for example, in the infrastructure, like were the roads in a different condition or a different design? Was there anything about it that stood out as, obviously I'm not in America now?
No, if you drove the streets of Vancouver, with the exception of, and even, with the exception of the signage, you could not tell the difference between you arriving any mainstream America city.
Wow.
It was city. The signage obviously was different, and in some cases it had different languages on it. But that would happen in America if you went to Chinatown or even in places like that. So that's not even valid.
Or in Hollywood, where everything's in meters now.
Now, what I will tell you, what was interesting is when you're part of the Alaskan trip, because we did 3 days in-road in Alaska, traveling the roads, and they only, I believe it's 5 major highways, north and south or east and west in the entire state.
It's
and as a matter of fact, Anchorage, which is their capital, is not accessible by car.
Wait, what?
Anchorage, which is their capital, is not accessible by car. You have to drive. You have to come in by rail, by boat, by plane.
So this is kind of like a Bald Head Island. Everybody's rolling around on golf carts.
Well, no, they got cars in the road. Yeah, because they're in a nice valley. It's beautiful. And then I was in a place called Skagway, which is an interesting thing because the river, because of the ocean flow, literally the water drops 8 foot when tides go out, and you can and during the day at certain times you can walk across that river because it's not deep enough. In fact, it's puddled in some places. But when tide comes in, it's 8 or 9 feet high, and you can drive your boats or whatever else you want up and down it. So that was a fascinating piece to see too.
Wow, and it happens every 12 hours.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it goes 6 hours to go out and 6 hours to come back.
And so you can take a walk and get lost for 12 hours and then walk home again.
The other thing, Alaska only has 800,000 people in the entire state.
That's like the entire population of Raleigh.
Pretty much. You know, and they
throughout
put it
the
across
entire state, and the state is larger than Texas.
Yep.
So the
You know, there is some rule that they make it smaller if they actually melt all the ice. But I tell you the interesting thing with animals. I mean, we saw moose everywhere, and you know, there was occasional black bears, and I did get to go whale hunting, which is what everybody likes to go see, whale jumping out of the water, and we did all the things we're supposed to do. And the other thing that was interesting is all their railroads use the narrow gauge. They don't have the wide gauge like we have here. And their explanation is it was just too expensive to make that wide a bed to put the train on for the rail. So they shrunk it down to the narrow gauge. But Alaska was an interesting place. I enjoyed traveling around there. Expensive, but you know, it was like any tourist town if you want. The prices were there, but it was an interesting day. It was an interesting trip.
Now, was there any outdoorsy stuff you did while you were up there? Because I understand the rugged nature of the Alaskan frontier is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely. We did some. I took a railway trip for 2 or 3 hours, and we did a 300-mile railroad trip through Alaska to get to the boat. And outdoors and rugged is the right word. In mountainous, I have to tell you, the mountains are beautiful, but it's even interesting because speaking of that, when you go back to Vancouver, bouncing back there for a little bit, there's an island called Vancouver Island, which is part of the city. And the way that is set up, and it stretches through Vancouver, the eastern side of Vancouver gets very little rain because of the mountains, and the western side is almost, on that island especially, is almost like tropical. They get beaches and whatever else because the rain doesn't get across the mountains like we do down in the Canadian mountains that we have coming across the Rockies. So it's interesting to pick up those little nuances when you're doing it with people. And just looking around. As the old history teacher, that's what I kind of look for, the unusual stuff and not just the usual tourist traps.
And what's already there rather than to what's already been painted or what has been painted and framed by people.
Right. Or tainted and framed.
Or tainted, yeah. Certainly tagged by somebody with a can of spray paint.
Yep.
Man, sounds like it was fun at first. And then the return was a little less enjoyable, I should say.
It was one of my bucket list things that I wanted to do, so I've checked that off the bucket, and then I don't have to go back there again. And I will tell you this, though, as I looked across from Skagway and even from, I did not see Russia.
No, but you looked.
I tried, but he wasn't out there. I found out something also interesting militarily. The United States Army just activated the 11th Airborne Brigade in Alaska.
I didn't know we had one.
Oh, we do have an airborne division in...
I knew that, but I didn't know that we had a presence in Canada. I thought that was like...
No, this is in Alaska. I'm sorry. I said Alaska.
Oh, in Alaska. It still seems like that's where you would put, you know, it's almost like putting a police center in a Walmart.
Yep.
I mean, why would you put a military base where there's 800 people, you know...
Well, because you're defending shores, which are only 12 miles from invasion.
And it's hard to keep that in mind, right? Because we're all snug here on the coast, that trying to think of Alaska as being less than the distance. I mean, you would see more of Russia than you would of the windmills.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. On a clear day with a telescope, you could see the other side. You would not see the windmills offshore from the beach. So it was interesting up there, but the Airborne Division or Brigade is going in. It's called the 11th Airborne Brigade. They constituted it. They're putting it together. Now, in typical Army fashion, who I love because I'm retired Army,
right.
The announcements they made was, and within 2 years, they'll have all their cold weather gear.
Oh, so a couple of the winters they're going to experience is going to be rather unpleasant.
Well, I think they issued them shorts, but they'll manage.
Because I do understand wintertime up there is without sunlight and lots of cold.
You know, the interesting times after you get to the northern part of Alaska, their temperature drops to, it can drop to minus 80 degrees.
Yeah, that's like popsicle. Human popsicle, not interested.
Yeah, they get down as low there. Traditionally in the winter, they get down to -10 to -40, but they have hit -80 at certain times. So,
and the oceanfront property there is a lot more affordable than here.
Oh, absolutely. So is the mountain property.
Mountain property
You want
also?
no problem. You know, and a lot of their outback, which I call they're out there, they can only be serviced, if you will. There's one of two ways. You have to fly your stuff in and out. Most of the people that live out in the middle of nowhere have a little plane that can land on water, and they land near a lake and they run it in and out. There is one place out of Skagway that has a train that runs up into the area, and what you do is if you need to come to town, you put it out and the train will stop and pick you up and will drop the supplies off if you arrange to have the supplies there, and you pick them up and they go back. It makes one run a day up and back.
Just to keep everybody alive and fed. That's crazy.
Yep, but it's what you got to do to take care of people.
Well, it seems like they have it a little bit more together than we do down here in the lower 48.
Well, you know, you do what you have to do. You know, we don't have to down here. Up there, it's either do it or die.
That's very true. I remember seeing watching a video piece. It seems that there's so few police officers that they're just like deputizing people at random, almost. I mean, that's got to be crazy when you get out to that area where there's just so few people per square mile. They have to like fly somebody in from 100 miles away to investigate any sort of crime. It's just hard, you know. It's not like here where we have a DG on every corner. You guys had to have a little preparation before you went anywhere.
Oh yeah, and I heard about their 1,000-mile dog sled race they do every year, and then what it was after the Iditarod, I think is what it's called. Basically, the story behind that was about 100 years ago. There was a town, Nome, as a matter of fact, Alaska, that had a major outbreak of the disease that they didn't have any of the medicine to cure, and what they needed was down in the southern part of Alaska, and the weather again was between 0 and -80. It was in the winter, and they set up a relay set of dog sleds to do that 1,000 miles to bring the necessary medicine into that little town and saved literally hundreds of lives.
Wow.
So every year they reiterate that race, and I think more than a couple of miles. The race is 1,049 miles long.
Man, those dogs are wiped out.
And they do it by dog sled.
I've seen some of the Iditarod footage. It's brutal cold. No. Yep. Yeah, you can't pay me enough to do that. Even if I was on a losing team.
Yeah, well, there's some people that, why do you climb mountains? Because they're there.
Right.
You know, that kind of return, and it's part of, you can do it. You got to prove you can do it. So they had that race
years ago.
And it does well. So anyway, well, I guess my time is about up, my friend. So I guess it's time to wrap, and we'll get together again next week.
And if I don't see you tomorrow night in one fashion or another, we will connect throughout the week and definitely connect by next Monday.
Yes, sir.
And thank you so much. Sorry?
And I'm always glad to talk to you, my friend. It's always a pleasure.
And thanks for your time. Welcome home. And tune in tomorrow night with All Things Brunswick at 6 o'clock. Your cohorts will take over for you, and it'll be the last train wreck before the return of the king.
The king is coming back, but let's just say that the prince and the princess are doing well.
They are. They have held the kingdom in good stead in your absence.
Have a good one, my friend.
Take care. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Bill Moore, the Brunswick County GOP chair. A lot of fun just returning from vacation. We're going to take a quick break and catch up on some of the asylum-friendly news. And then, let's see, after that, I have a feeling we're going to go to a friend of mine, Mr. Paul Valone from Grassroots, North Carolina. All of that happens. Whoops. Well, that's fine. It'll all happen as soon as we get back right here on the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad.
Keeping Baldhead Island informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Teachers and parents, the North Carolina Symphony is here to support you as you carry on the education of your children and students. Take your kids on a free virtual field trip to the Symphony with a virtual education concert and companion student book. Go on a virtual journey to learn what makes music music, with music by William Grant Still, Beethoven, Brahms, and more. Access the free video and student book with password 1932 at ncsymphony.org/virtual.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gabe Frank of the Frank Institute, and I wanted to tell you about our IV vitamin, infusion, and hydration therapies. These IVs are the most effective treatment for vitamin and nutrition deficiencies available, and with our wide range of offering, your treatment can be tailored to your specific needs. Whether you struggle with hydration or nutritional deficiency, injury recovery, low energy, please feel free to check out our IV infusions today. Schedule an appointment at 910-679-8534 or check out all our treatment services at www.frankinstitute.com.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Wilmington police are investigating two shootings in the city over the weekend. The first occurred around 1:30 a.m. Saturday when officials responded to a ShotSpotter alert near the 400 block of North 30th Street. When they arrived, they found a 17-year-old with a gunshot wound. That teen was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. We will provide more information as it becomes available. And less than 24 hours later, police responded to an incident a few miles away near the intersection of Greenfield and 11th Streets. When officers arrived, they found a 20-year-old man suffering from a gunshot wound. Police performed CPR until EMS arrived, but he died on the scene. The victim's name has not yet been released. If you have any information on either shooting, you are asked to contact Wilmington Police. Protesters in the Cape Fear continue to voice their anger surrounding the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Several people stood on the steps of City Hall in downtown Wilmington yesterday. The demonstrators said the decision infringes women's rights to make decisions about their bodies, which they say is personal to the individual. In North Carolina, abortion is allowed with restrictions. Counseling is state mandated with a 72-hour waiting period. And a popular Wilmington restaurant shut its doors for dinner service this weekend after the historic Supreme Court decision. The owners of Ceviche's canceled more than 150 reservations to join a protest Friday night at Innis Park in downtown Wilmington. Owner Laura Tiblier says she closed in solidarity with those who feel at risk of losing their right to bodily autonomy. Tiblier says the restaurant understands cancellations were short notice, but wanted to use their platform to support women who were upset by the news. She says the restaurant's social media was flooded with positive reaction to their decision to close. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Monday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. First full week of summer, and we have temperatures in the upper 80s, low 90s away from the coast today. Most of the day will stay dry and quiet, but if you're headed out to the beaches, you may have to watch out for an isolated shower or two as your temperatures get into the middle 80s later this afternoon. As we head into the overnight hours tonight, a cold front begins to work its way into our area, elevating our shower and storm chances, with temperatures dropping down into the low to middle 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Veteran Awareness sponsored by You Are Not Alone. Today's veteran homeless rate is approximately 19,750, and the numbers are declining because of the various veteran programs. If you or a veteran you know is homeless, please call 877-4AID-VET. This is a confidential and toll-free call. From this veteran to other veterans, please be there to help our brother and sister veterans. Again, the number is 1-877-424-3838. And thank you for your service.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Folks, the sad truth of it is most of what we're seeing in the news cycle is just noise, and it's recycled noise at that. Nothing informative, nothing that actually helps us discern the times that we live in. That's why we started doing Heard Tell. Every morning, right here on Big Talker Network, 7 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m., we talk and discuss the issues of the day, culture, and politics with knowledgeable guests. No yelling, no caterwauling, just grown folk talk about the issues that matter. Join me, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning for Heard Tell.
Hey, welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. Boy, what a Monday morning this is. Not only did I wake up late, I realized the computer never went to sleep. Boy, did we miss out on a lot this morning. Heard Tell will be playing at 3 o'clock this afternoon as normal, seeing as how nothing ran this morning. Boy, that was fun. Woke me up real quick. Didn't even need the coffee. It was like, oh my goodness, everything's just gone sideways. Don't forget to visit the website, bigtalker.live. Peruse our schedule of content for any shows you may like and when they run. You can also send us an email with any questions, comments, concerns, compliments, or critiques you may have. We can't improve without you letting us know what you like and don't like. Also, we have, what else is on there? Oh, that's right. Download the app for Android and iOS devices. All right. Oh, look at this. We have some news coming at me. Here we go. Let's see. Oh, right here in North Carolina. I gotta cover this one. All right. Squirrel. We may have already covered this one. I can't remember. Ben Hooper saving me again. Squirrel knocks out power to 3,000. Yeah, we covered this. Poor thing got fried. 4,000. Let's see, where was it? 3,000 customers in downtown Asheville, including multiple businesses and government buildings, lost power Wednesday morning when a squirrel came in contact with some wiring. None of this makes sense, ladies and gentlemen, at all. Doing what I can with what I got left. Not a lot, because again, I mean, it's hard to explain. When you get older, some days you have discomfort that prevents you from getting comfortable. So sleep is elusive, and that's exactly what happened last night. So yeah, I'm a little sideways, kind of exhausted this morning. That's why I'm relying heavily on my guests, such as Bill Moore, the Brunswick County GOP chair, and his adventures in the Northland. And a quick, fun conversation about the windmills. Again, you know, these guys have done some research, but a lot of their arguments were based on subjective rationale, if that's, you know, if that makes sense. And it's probably close enough to their personal self that it's not going to be something they want to, what's the word I want to say, put up with? Hang on, I'm trying to make some changes here. Sorry, the brain cells are just not making it to the top on my first cup of coffee. Trying to talk about anything difficult is you know, anything heavy. Sorry, the subjective arguments were more flimsy. Now, the argument they made that the people who came to represent the positive aspects of the windmill farm were indeed lobbyists, but then again, that's how this works, right? So if you want real anti-windmill lobbyists, right, that's what it would take, is it takes money and it takes lobbyists. And it takes some research to give them the data, right, because they are very well informed, so they're given basically a script to work with. I am not going to bemoan them that. That's their job. Would I like to see an engineer or a scientist as opposed to a very well-groomed and aesthetically pleasing mouthpiece for the company or for the movement or whatever the term is? Yeah, do I think it's unfair? No. Not at all. That's what these people are paid and prepared for, right? So I think the debate tomorrow evening, my prediction is that it's going to be very pro-heavy, if that makes sense. Because the people that are against it can't really talk facts when all of their arguments are subjective in nature. There is no fact to a subjective call, I guess, right? You know, it's a personal call. You may not like a pink and blue building painted house in your neighborhood. I don't think I would be bothered. But some of the HOAs have a real problem with what color your house can be. On the beach, they don't seem to care. It can be Pepto-Bismol pink, and the next one's turquoise, and the next one's bright yellow, right? But in some of the HOAs, if you paint your house anything other than the 3 pre-selected approved colors, you'll be fined or held to account for something here, there, or somehow. That's not entirely freedom, right? You want to talk about freedom? As we chatted with Chad just the other day, I think it was Friday, there's more freedom in other countries than we have right here. The ability to choose the color of your house. Some of the other freedoms are the ones we have real problems with, like, you know, blue hair or guys wearing a dress. I saw a comedy sketch routine over the weekend I thought was awesome. It was based on the Pokemon characters from a comedy troupe. Now, of course, the comedy troupe doesn't have, you know, the vast, what do you call them, members or whatever, you know, it's just like 6 of them doing this whole thing. So some of them have to play roles that are not necessarily their own gender. But the thing is, we've been doing this since the beginning of time. Why anybody would freak out now is beyond me, right? In fact, women weren't allowed to act in the very beginnings of it, so men had to wear modified prosthetics for the day. You know, usually a couple of grapefruits held in by a piece of toga. But that's what it took, right? You know, Tootsie and what was the other one? Doubtfire, right? The concept isn't lost on us. Our ability to handle it has. It seems like there's a xenophobia to our own boundaries of good taste, you know, based on whatever. Sometimes it's a religious book. Sometimes it's a belief in a book that they've never read. All while claiming freedom, etc., when they've never actually read or taken the time to understand what's actually in the Constitution. But I digress. That seems to be our entire basis, is having knee-jerk reactions to everything. As Bill pointed out, there's less understanding now of the Roe versus Wade issue than there was when the trial, you know, when the case was in front of the court in the first place. It's not about the actual abortion, the procedure. It's about the control of the rights to that, right? So rights and freedoms are on opposite sides of the same coin. Your rights are limited by your freedom, and your freedom is limited by your rights. That is, the whole fire in a crowded theater, thwarting someone else's personal liberties. There's a different arrangement for that. But we can't read and understand what it is we're reading, and if we aren't studying what it is that makes this country so great, making America great again would have been a ridiculous statement for most of the people with, an 8th grade education or beyond, because they would understand, and this is only going to appeal, it's only going to land true for people over 40, that understanding what makes this country great is understanding what it is to be in this country. To understand the branches of government, to understand the checks and balances. Apparently our former president didn't. Otherwise he would understand that the DOJ, the entire Justice Department, is a check and balance to the executive and legislative branches, as is the legislative branch being a check to the executive and the judicial. And of course the executive being a check to both the judicial and the legislative. It's really neat the way this works, but if you haven't read it and don't understand it, you'll never grasp it, and you'll never be able to... You'll never be offended by the Make America Great rhetoric. But those who understand the Constitution, I would, most of the people I talk to, even if they are conservative in nature, maybe even a registered Republican, that's more the issue for them. So when you're limited in what you can choose, you don't really have the freedom of choice. Let me run that again. If you don't have much to choose, you don't really have a freedom of choice. If you are presented with two of the worst human beings ever to grace the planet as your presidential candidates, we're kind of screwed. You see that? You see how that works? If somebody doesn't know the Constitution and they get elected into the office, we run into all kinds of problems. And that's basic education, and this guy's 20 years older than me. 15 years older than I. And I knew back in the 70s when he announced about the Central Park 5, it was like, this is a bad idea. Oh my goodness. I have communications going on here. Apparently there's a story coming out of HQR. I just got announced, or just got sent to me, and I'm not sure what's happening quite yet, because I'm not sure. Oh! So this is coming out of HQR. Benjamin Schachtman, accused of predatory abuse of power, state Senate candidate Jason Minicozzi withdraws, blaming financial issues. Several days ago, a woman came forward on social media accusing Minicozzi of using his access to court records to proposition her after she appeared in court to testify against an abusive ex. Minicozzi refused to acknowledge the incident, but the state's Democratic Party made it clear harassment was the reason he dropped out. Democratic candidate Jason Minitz, I'm not going to get it right, a former Brunswick County prosecutor and current public defender in New Hanover County, is dropping out of the race for North Carolina State Senate District 7, where he was facing incumbent Republican State Senator Michael Lee. You know what? I'm just going to call him and see what happens. hopefully I'll get something on. I'll get somebody on the line because I'm not sure exactly what's involved here. Let's see. Good morning, Chad.
Good morning.
You sent me this article, and I'm trying to parse because I'm not awake. It's been a heck of a morning.
Okay.
Minikatsi, who is this guy?
He's running for office.
Right, but apparently he's got some history prior to this race.
Yeah, and he's got problems, and he's going to withdraw, it looks like. Or either he already has. I'm reading through 15 articles right now, and I caught that, and I said, I need to send this one to TK.
Because it is catching up that all I saw there in the moment, like in the second glance, was former Brunswick County prosecutor and current
Public
defender.
Yeah.
So,
are you on air?
Yes, sir. I'm on air, and it's been a morning. The station locked up. I didn't get very good sleep, so I woke up late, and it's been a mess, as you put it. Managed to get on here just in time to have our friend Bill Moore join us, who has finally returned from his expedition in Alaska and Canada. And I was, just struggling to put the neurons together when I saw this pop up, and apparently it's important. Apparently this is centered around a lady. He's trying to claim financial issues. This was actually about a woman he harassed facing a case?
Yeah, well, the Democrat Party has said that he's pulling out due to this harassment issue, harassment, whatever you want to call it. The Democrat Party is very clear about why he is out of the race. He's trying to claim it's financial issues, but then the records are all there. He's actually, he's a Democrat candidate, a former Brunswick County prosecutor, as you said, a public defender in New Hanover County, dropping out of the race. He was going to face Michael Lee. As you know, Michael Lee has faced Harper Peterson. He lost once to Harper Peterson, who showed how left that he had become, meaning the former mayor of Wilmington as a senator was extreme left. I mean, further left than even the AOCs of the world. And now, they recruited, they beat the Bushes to face Michael Lee in a race, and they recruited Jason. I mean, the governor helped recruit. Governor Cooper was involved, the Democrat Senate caucus, all of those were involved in recruiting him. And now he's pulled out of the race here in almost July. It's kind of a difficult time. And then he's trying to cover it up to say, well, it's really just financial issue, but it's not. So all of the allegations are posted.
And all the Democratic Party now is scrambling to come up with a candidate?
Yeah, they'll have to. So the party will have to come up with another candidate to put on the ballot.
Because he was it, right? Because this is for the primary.
He was it.
Wow. But otherwise, the other candidate is running literally unopposed.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good.
No, it's a mess. It's just a mess. I mean,
could they have like a mistrial or a misvote or a miselection or whatever?
No, it's just the candidate has to drop out and the party has to pick another candidate.
But they have to have a candidate. I mean, a warm body with a name and a D after it.
They don't have to, but, it's in their best interest to do so. But at this point, put yourself in the position of being a potential candidate. It's like, okay, we want you to come join. Nobody knows who you are unless they they could go try to recruit a Julia Bozeman, but there are rumors the
background check and everybody will know them.
New Hanover County politics are nothing if not a kind of a Peyton Place world. And and it's Wilmington, I used to love to say in my time on the radio there that Wilmington was North Carolina's largest small town. And what I mean by that is it's a good-sized city in the scale of North Carolina, but it's still small enough that everybody knows everybody. I mean, all the players know each other. All of the little...
Oh, the families go back generations.
Well, it's not just the families, but it's the people, the players. When you're involved in this kind of stuff, everybody knows everybody there. So, anyway, I've got a call coming, but I'm not going to take it because this is more interesting. So whenever things happen, whether things that used to go on in Myrtle Beach years ago, I remember Jim Burns and R.C. Souls
and all of these people would get in these bizarre situations, and everybody would rush to cover it up, but a lot of the people knew about it. So you cover it up from maybe getting out of the box outside of New Hanover, Columbus, and Brunswick, but people knew about it. I mean, the situation with John David, many people, it's been in every newspaper in the state, but nobody really focused on it. It's an absolute train wreck, and it was a mess. I mean, it involved 3 different elected officials that were all in a very serious mess that Nick Oxter from WBTV first reported years ago. And now we have this situation, and the situation with Julia Bozeman. Rumors were that she was going to switch parties, and she's the head of the county commission. And then she's being prosecuted for legal malpractice when she's tried to say she's out of it. And then the public blow up between Julia Bozeman and Deb Butler, who are in the same party. Two of the first openly gay members of the General Assembly. Julia Bozeman always was. She was the first openly gay member, and then Butler is now, and Butler's in a very difficult race with John Hennett. But Deb Butler and Julia Bozeman were going at it because Deb Butler wanted to stop military aircraft from flying over the city because it was destroying the city and
causing
destroying property
cancer.
values. Yeah, and Julia Bozeman's like, wait a minute, they're a big part of our community. You want to declare war on the military? What are you talking about? Just work with them. Whatever it is that's bothering you, just work on them. The airport's there. You can't move the airport.
And they'll be done in 5-10 minutes. I mean, they fly by and they're gone.
They touch and go, and they're in and out, but they destroy the homes and fly too low or whatever she claimed. But that's what I'm saying. Wilmington is a fascinating world
it's like
when
a
it
Petri
comes
dish.
to it is. But it's more than that because in a way that's good. I wish more cities were like. I wish there was more openness in Brunswick County, for instance. Brunswick County, a lot of things happen here that people it doesn't get a lot of attention. There's 2 small newspapers that have great historical readership, but now readership is very low. Not as many people read or pay attention. So a lot of stuff happens. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that the former sheriff, Ron Hewitt, gets investigated, ends up in jail, dies in jail. I think he died in the jail in New Hanover County. But that was when people were paying attention. Now, you don't know. Well, I mean, a lot of people do know, and there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. But there's more fear in Brunswick County now from citizens that are afraid of public officials than I've ever seen.
Well,
and it shouldn't be that way. And government should fear the people, not the other way around.
While this is true, I would say that the attention not attracted to these stories is going to be in stiff competition with like the July 6th, the Ukraine war, whatever happened to be the issue du jour, right, of what kept us distracted, whether it's UFOs or, the latest rounds of subpoenas or whatever it is. Do you think that might have some influence on how far a story can reach?
No, I think that social media has allowed everybody with an opinion and an ego to have an elevated sense of themselves. And I don't mean that to be mean.
No, you're saying that to be accurate.
Yeah, and I think that in general, there is also a snowflakeness to people that we can't disagree without being disagreeable. In other words, it turns into specifically, and I'm going to sound like I'm beating up on the left, which I enjoy doing, by the way. I think they've become very militant in the way they conduct. It reminds me of anyone who attacks the Church of Scientology. Scientology will turn around and viciously attack anyone who criticizes them because they believe that a lot is at stake. If they lose their church, nonprofit status, they become a business, have to pay taxes. It'll be the beginning of the end. So anyone who attacks them or points out crazy stuff they do is going to be viciously attacked and haunted by PIs and footer. The left has kind of become that way. The radicalized part of the left has become very extreme. The Roe v. Wade overturning, I've never seen as much anger and misinformation pumped out there. Oh, they've destroyed the rights of women. They've taken stuff away. And if you read the ruling, the ruling is actually quite beautiful to read. And I don't mean whether you're against or for abortion. The ruling is quite beautiful because it talks about prior to 50 years ago, there was nothing about federal law that protected necessarily privacy or abortion. There's nothing. And that Roe, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she went too far. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that Roe went too far. And this affirms what Ruth Bader Ginsburg was saying. So the ruling's actually quite beautiful, saying, look, we have 50 states, and these states are where this should remain. So much more of what we do at the federal level should be at the state level. That's what makes this country great, is the closer to the power, the closer to the people is where it should be. So if states want to have abortion, and then you start looking at when the news media started saying, these states have outlawed abortion. Then you look at those abortion laws. Many of those states didn't outlaw abortions. They outlawed abortion after 12 weeks or 15 weeks or 20 weeks. So wait a minute. So it's still allowed, but it's just in the second trimester, we're kind of pulling back. And then you compare that to where the left thinks that Europe is. And if you look at Italy, or if you look at France, or if you look at England, even the states that they say are anti-abortion, the laws in those states are more liberal than many of the laws in Europe. So wait a minute, this is not. And then the other thing that got thrown out over the weekend, and I'm just trying to say we ought to be having discussions. We should not be just throwing, welcome to the Rob Reiner tweeted, welcome to the Handmaid's Tale. They're going to take everything, and now they're going to take gay marriage away from you, and they're going to take. There's no move for that. In fact, they may move gay marriage to the states or something, but they're not going to make it out. They're not going to outlaw gay marriage. But as I'm looking through this, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, they didn't make any discernment about RU486 or the morning after pill. So I got attacked by people. I just hope your mother, you didn't get raped by that your sister doesn't get raped by your father and stuff like this. And I'm thinking, wow, you're really upset about something that there already are ways to deal with. And I wrote back RU486, morning after pill, and prosecuting child rapists. Those are three things that didn't change.
Right.
And reproductive rights. Hey, one of the reproductive rights is to have sex. No one took away your ability to have sex. It's just this unbelievable tirade of anger and seething, and it was like it's all this pent-up rage, and it's just hard to believe that many people can hold on to that much anger for that long.
Well, keep in mind, I'm going to go back to when you said it's an elegant writ. The problem is most are not like yourself. Most people have the reading comprehension level of 12 to 14-year-old, which is right in the middle of the angst era in personal growth and development for most people emotionally. So if
but they grow up. But you
no,
grow
they don't.
Up.
No, they don't.
You want to believe
how many
they
squat
do.
trucks do you see rolling through the neighborhood? And you tell me how many of these people have actually grown up. We have a higher percentage of people living at home with their mom who do their laundry than we have. You can't tell me we're growing up.
I started watching because I love reality TV. Because if you ever want to feel better about your own personal life, you can watch whether you watch Hoarders, every time you watch an episode of Hoarders, you'll want to clean your house up. Every time you watch an episode, whatever the reality TV show is, My Strange Addiction, you have no desire.
That's why I watch all the car crash videos so that I don't wreck my cars.
I don't know if I do that, but anyway, interestingly enough, so there's a show on Netflix. It's about snowflakes. Now, at first, I thought this was going to be a stupid show. I was like, yet another reality show, another stupid dating show or something. I don't know. But I turned it on and started watching, and it's a bunch of 20-somethings, 21 to 28 years of age, that really are really proud of the fact that they are worthless to society. Now, they don't say that. They just say, hey, I don't think I should have to clean. I don't think I should have to work.
The most entitled.
This snowflake, it's called Snowflake Mountain. So I start watching it, and these people are just this sense of entitlement, this sense that I'm better than you are, all of these things.
Without any real contribution to that.
None.
Like if you're Neil deGrasse Tyson and solving all the world's problems and doing that kind of work, you can kind of get away with it. But if you can't even iron your own socks, then
no. Not only do they not, that they're entitled and therefore they're right about everything that they do, and everyone else is wrong. And so they think they're going on this wonderful vacation. They sign up for. Their parents are aware of what's going on. But the kids are like, oh my God, I can't wait. They take them out in the middle of nowhere. And then they, get all their luggage off this bus, And they're like, wait a minute, where's the nice resort? Where's everything? And they say, well, come on, get your suitcase, the things you think are essential. And then they take their suitcases and they blow them up. And these people start openly weeping and crying and naming the brand names of things that got destroyed. And then over the course of the show, they're learning life lessons, and it's a harsh, it's not as harsh as you and I would think, but harsh for them. And they start becoming real people and, realizing that the world is bigger than just their version of it. And I think that's one of the issues we have is we get stuck in our own cocoon and we start thinking we're far more important than we are. And then it happens with public officials. It happens with, nearly everyone on all sides. But as I'm watching the Twitter feeds, and watching these people just melt down, and I'm thinking, wow, if your life has reached a point where that is the single most important issue in your life, you've missed the big picture. You've really missed the richness of life is more than just calling a fetus an inconvenience. There's so much more to life than that, and there's no salient conversation. But I would encourage people who haven't read it, go out there. The Associated Press has printed the entire discussion and agreement and the history and all of it. It's right there, and it's unbiased and unvarnished, and it's worth the read. I would encourage anyone to read it. It's some beautiful writing in there that talks about history and different cases. And how Roe was bad case law. It just was bad. It was always bad case law, and it should have never been a federal issue. Still shouldn't be. And now and Democrats didn't get their way, and now the Democrats want to change the law. They want to time to pack the court, get more people on there. When they don't get a ruling they like, they want to change the rules, get rid of the filibuster, codify it into federal law. That's the reaction rather than why don't we look at why Roe was probably too far, and what are the implications in other issues? Do we want to federalize every aspect of our life? There's an article this morning that says the real answer to our problems with the gas prices is that the federal government needs to nationalize the oil companies. Now, whenever a group of people tell you they want the federal government to nationalize anything, you should run for the hills, or you should do everything you can to push back on that, because it's never an answer that works. Just ask the people of Venezuela who were asked to start eating rabbits. So, no, not an answer. But at the local level, coming back to where we started, when you're talking about Jason Mazzola, I can't even say his name right, Mazzola. There were issues there, and a woman. It's a shame that a woman had to come forward, meaning the candidate was well aware, but this woman came forward and really, the posts were there, and she was a victim, but for her. And he was well aware of what he had done, or should have been. And many elected officials in these rural counties, Bladen, that don't have Columbus, Brunswick, a lot of stuff gets swept under the rug. And that's one of my biggest fears, is that we really have a lack of coverage, a lack of people knowing what's going on. They don't know what's going on in their county budget. They don't know what's going on with their ordinances. They are unaware until it affects them, and then
there it is.
Important.
It's not important,
and then they don't, and then they wonder why other people aren't as enraged as they are.
And that's where I think we have a good segue. Mr. Paul Valone has joined us this morning. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
And Chad is with us. He's been highlighting us with a couple of issues here, and apparently you guys cross paths right here with the getting the word out. So, good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. And getting the word out how exactly?
Well, in the case...
Well, no, just Paul, I was referring to the fact that so many things happen at local levels, and even at the county and sometimes the state level, and people are unaware of the things that are taking place. And so they don't realize things are. They get so focused on a national issue that they don't realize things are happening locally to them. And there's not really good, outside of the major markets like where you are toward Mecklenburg or Wake or Guilford even, but outside of those media markets, a lot of rural areas where things take place, people just aren't aware of what's going on because there's very little media coverage, and there's even less media coverage now than there was 10 years ago.
Well, that's probably particularly true of state politics, but I maintain that that legislatures, well, let me put it this way. I tell people, lest you assume the legislative process is designed to exclude you, let me assure you that it is. Okay? That's why we issue alerts to people, legislative alerts, both on state and sometimes local and certainly national issues. And we issue the alerts in a way that allows people with limited time and perhaps not a full understanding of what's going on to respond in just a couple of minutes to click to a message and send a message, even a preformed message to a legislator quickly and easily. And that's how we maximize the grassroots input to the process.
And to his point, and I said this last week, TK, when we were talking, having been in that legislative building for the better part of 25 years, back 25 years ago, there were probably 40 or 50 people that covered, maybe 30 years ago, 50 people or so that covered issues at the General Assembly for all their local newspapers across the state, radio stations, everything. And now there's probably 10 or less, 5 to 10 people that cover. And there's more detail and more going on there. So to Paul's point, getting people to be aware of what's happening at the legislative level through the legislative process, that democracy dies in darkness, and there's a lot of darkness that takes place there. Because it's not that I don't think it's necessarily of intent, although I think they like the fact that there's very little coverage because they get away with doing more. And that's how you ended up with a David Lewis being a corrupt official probably for years and years and years because no one was really paying attention until it was too late. And he was writing checks to himself, calling it NCGOP because he had created an LLC to write checks to. So Paul's point, very true, and Paul has figured out a way to get people active and to get them plugged in on the issues he cares about and his organization cares about, and that's unfortunately where we find ourselves.
And it becomes especially true because right now, with the self-destruction of the newspaper industry, what you're seeing are largely online news sources that self-select to people's viewpoints. Conservatives look at conservative media, leftists look at leftist media, and quite frankly, the media on each side is not interested in interviewing the other side. As a matter of fact, I noted we held a demonstration at Tom Tillis's district office on Friday, and although I did some media on that, I noticed a profound difference over the years in the type of media interviews I was being asked to do, namely that the so-called mainstream media, the leftist media, ignored us largely, and most of the media interviews I was doing were only from our side, and apparently there is no center anymore.
He's right. It's unfortunately true, and we've talked about that. Tillis being one of the 10 Republican senators that joined to create the new gun laws. And something that's very near and dear to Paul's and his organization's heart. And and he's right. It's very selective media. It's hard to get balance. It's really hard to get that balance, and we've lost the ability to have substantive debates because of that.
Well, that's why the big talker is here. All Things Brunswick has been having debates on the windmills. They had debates with every candidate that was running, every candidate that responded that was running for office in Brunswick County. If we do more of that, I think we can at least have our own local information station, if you will, to hopefully get these information. That's why we have Paul on every Monday, because he brings this to our attention and a way to get involved with it.
And has done an outstanding job of engaging the issues that he cares about with clarity for a long time now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And we've got a lot of good volunteers that make that possible. Because of course, Grassroots North Carolina is an all-volunteer organization, and so we've recruited some very talented people, including analyzing what Senator Tillis has been telling his constituents about the federal gun control bill that just passed. Interestingly, he's been making some, shall we say, carefully parsed statements about what's contained in the bill. I've actually had, and again, lest you believe the legislative process is designed to exclude you, let me assure you it is. I get people going, well, you've been telling me that all this federal gun control is in the bill, and Senator Tillis says it's not. Well, not exactly. I mean, to give you just one example, Tillis says, does the legislation create background checks and waiting periods? No. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act does not expand the background check system, does not change the age to purchase a firearm, and does not create a mandatory waiting period for all purchasers. What he's avoiding saying is it does create it for some purchasers, namely as long as a 10-day waiting period for buyers under the age of 21. And it most certainly does expand the background check system because it now includes juvenile records. What I'm looking at right now is whether we're going to have conforming legislation in North Carolina to release those juvenile records. There's a whole host of stuff in this legislation that Tillis really just doesn't want to talk about. When his answer to these people doesn't talk about the so-called boyfriend loophole. And by the way, is that sexist to call it a boyfriend loophole? Just asking. And it expands the Lautenberg Amendment's misdemeanor crimes of domestic violence.
Wait, and a boyfriend is a non-birthing person.
There you go.
I mean, we got to go back to the beginning with all of this. And with the reading comprehension level at the public, general public being at 6th to 8th grade, we're really not staring down the barrel of success here.
But get to Paul. Paul, what was you were making a point, though.
Sorry.
About the boyfriend loophole and domestic violence.
Yeah, this so-called boyfriend loophole expands the Lautenberg Amendment from the 1990s, which created, and I quote, misdemeanor crimes of domestic violence. Now, this was the first instance in which a misdemeanor, rather than a felony, barred people from gun ownership. Only now, it would expand it to some vague sort of dating relationship, whatever that means. And although the bar to someone in that dating relationship who commits a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence is theoretically only 5 years rather than permanent, we expect the Democrats to come back very quickly looking to close that loophole as well. So Senator Tillis is being somewhat disingenuous with his constituents as to what is in the bill he just engineered, basically.
And we find, in Tillis's career, he's very good at being pragmatic and playing chess with his political position to advance his ability to affect outcomes. So that's a way of being dismissive of a group that he's determined is a lesser player that won't affect his path forward. And I don't mean to be mean or any. I've known Tillis beat John Rhodes many years ago, who was a hardcore conservative, and Tillis was a town councilman in Cornelius, North Carolina, challenged him and won, and it had a lot to do with, being a more moderate presence, and quickly became Speaker of the House through the utilization of such tactics, and has been a steadfast moderate. I think even Tillis would be hard pressed. He runs to the right during an election, but in general he governs from the center, and not even if you're looking at the political spectrum out there at 2 or 3 o'clock, but closer to 12:30 in the middle part of the, if you're looking at a clock. So, and I don't think Paul would disagree with any of that. Tillis is, ill-pressed to be considered a conservative on almost any front.
Absolutely right. And by the way, your memory for his history is very good, because I used to live in Cornelius. I lived about 2 miles from Tom Tillis's house. And in fact, one time when he was Speaker of the House, I offered to put a demonstration in his front yard.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I agree with your assessment of Tillis. He calls himself a conservative, but he is, a moderate to left-leaning, which, of course, is why one of the things we had in our demonstration, we had 2 guys in rhino outfits with holding up a Tom Tillis rhino sign. So we thought that was sort of commentary.
Who said politics isn't funny?
Pardon me?
Who said politics isn't funny?
Yeah, we try to be. Well, I mean, this is a straight Solinsky stuff. The most effective weapon is ridicule.
Yes.
And that's the author of your anti-book, right?
Exactly. Rules for anti-radicals, absolutely. what I did is I started with Saul Alinsky's 13 Rules for Radicals, which I have over the years learned to, with a little jujitsu, to apply back to the left. They really don't like that very much. But then in the book, I expanded on it further and gave people new 21st century tactics for beating leftists. The interesting thing about Tillis is that when we showed up at his district office for a redress of grievances with our elected representative as guaranteed us by the First Amendment, he closed his office.
Hey, man, the donuts were cooking, dude. You cut them some slack, man. Those Brits donuts don't, you got to get them when they're fresh.
But it's an interesting time where we are more removed, and those that are in power want to be further removed from people rather than closer to them, and that's a serious where it becomes, and it has been for some time, the desire to stay in power rather than stand on the issues and be very clear about where you are on the political spectrum. I mean, no one debates where Rand Paul is on the political spectrum. No one has to worry about where that is. No one has to worry. Even if you look at someone, I'm trying to think of someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you don't have to worry about where she or Bernie Sanders are on the political spectrum. Now, you can disagree with it, but they're very clear on where they are on that. And so, but sadly, there's a lot of these more pragmatic grand chess masters that want to be not so sure. So when there's a vote in the House and the Senate, we don't know where Burr and Tillis are going to come out on it. We can guess, but until we see the vote, I mean, whether you hated or loved Jesse Helms, if you were riding around and it was a certain conservative issue or liberal issue, you knew how he was going to vote. You knew where he was on the political spectrum. And unfortunately, we don't know where a lot of our political types are today.
I would agree entirely with all of that except one thing. I do very much worry about where AOC is on the political spectrum.
I worry about where she is.
Well, I don't worry. No, I know where she is on the political spectrum. I know where she and Ilhan Omar are. I know where they're going to be on the far left. I never have to think that they're going to ever vote to decrease taxes, decrease the power and scope of the federal government, really go for property rights, really look at the Constitution from an originalist standpoint. I know where they are. And, unfortunately, I wish I could say that my two senators, I knew where they were on that, because those issues that I just named don't seem to be real important to them in the way they govern.
The good news on all of that is that when we have the Senate race in November, we have two candidates where we know exactly where they stand, okay?
Well,
Ted Budd is a clear conservative, okay? His voting record, his bill sponsorship record, his public statements, he's very much a conservative. Sherry Beasley, on the other hand, just issued a statement saying she wants to end the filibuster, thanks to the Roe v. Wade decision. And so by ending the filibuster, she, of course, even though she's been a Supreme Court justice, all right, she would obviously pack the court. Basically, what this means is we have someone who's been a Supreme Court justice who has absolutely no respect for the Constitution. Amazing.
Who reversed a lot of what Mark Martin was doing in the courts, who took over after he departed to go work in Virginia at Regent University, and who really went through the administrative office of the courts in North Carolina and gutted and got rid of and hunted down Republicans to remove from that agency. I mean, who also ran and was largely unopposed, even though there were 13 candidates against her, but really she was the foregone winner of that race. Went on air and spent money trying to convince North Carolinians during the primary that she was a moderate, that she disagreed with both parties. And to Paul's point, that individual is as far left as North Carolina could possibly have found. It has nothing to do with her race. It has nothing to do with her gender. It has everything to do with where she has placed emphasis on issues that affect all of North Carolinians. So Paul's exactly right. We have a hardcore liberal against a hardcore conservative, meaning that we know where these two people are. But I'll guarantee you, as we get closer to November, when Democrats on the generic ballot are down by 12 points and the economy is terrible, in large measure because of Democrat policies and the implications and what has happened, elections have consequences, that Beasley will run as hard to the middle or to the center as she could possibly get politically to make Ted Budd look too extreme for North Carolina. That's the campaign. That's the tactic. Beasley will not run as an ideologue liberal, as a card-carrying ACLU member, which is what she really likely is. And we know that from her record. But she will run away from it, and she will do everything she can to obfuscate and confuse people about and smokescreen away from that.
And this
the
is
good
why...
news is...
Oh, sorry.
The good news is this is where super PACs come in, okay? I don't think Club for Growth is going to let her do that. I don't think our super PAC is going to let her do that. You can count on the fact that we will be highlighting her true record.
And that's also why you generate the slate cards. I mean, you put a lot of energy, effort into the research, concatenation, and distribution of this information. So it's for those of the candidates that you're not really sure of, you at least have one good angle to look at.
Yeah, you're talking about our Remember November project.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We hope to get out 175,000 voter guides this year to gun-owning voters, probably mailing in excess of 100,000 directly to gun-owning voters. And they evaluate each candidate on a 0 to 4-star evaluation system based objectively on how often, given their voting record, their bill sponsorship record, and survey scores, how often they can be expected to agree with a control group of conservative gun owners. And so that is an objective case. If you will, it's the AAA guide to political candidates. And so that hopefully will also help highlight her real record.
Exactly, and it's available at the website. It's going to be mailed. I mean, it's a lot of good information that's missing in the greater scheme of things, because all the media seems to be more interested in the flash and trash and the beautiful bunting and the yelling and the outlandish behaviors, when places like the grassroots North Carolina is actually developing information as opposed to trying to highlight all the craziness selling cars, carpets, and candy bars.
Now, we will take that information and use it with our two political action committees. The GRNC Political Victory Fund is a conventional federal PAC, and the Judicial Fairness Project is our super PAC. We've been very successful in doing, for example, we did mailings on the Democrats who signed the petition to defund police in the last election. And I'm happy to say we won in 5 out of 7 races, including taking out Moms Demand Action activist, come North Carolina House Rep Christy Clark. And so, also in Cornelius, by the way. But
a lot happening in the hive down there.
Returning Bradford to the North Carolina House. So I'm happy to say taking out Christy Clark was one of the high points of that election.
Man. Well, gentlemen, what a wonderful morning. It's, getting close to the end of the hour. Is there anything else y'all want to throw in before we hit the music and bring in the commercials yet?
I just want to say thanks to Paul for being a part of what we're doing here with the Big Talker app.
Big time.
So, but go ahead, Paul.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. And I just wanted to point out that after the July 4th recess, the Senate will come back, and they're going to probably take a vote to confirm Dettelbach as ATF director. And this guy is every bit as bad as the previous Biden choice. So people should go to grnc.org, monitor our alerts, and we're going to have a lot on the ATF confirmation in coming days.
Do you still have the big stop sign on your website?
We do, but it's got to come off because that one is unfortunately no longer relevant.
Oh, okay. But I knew that you had updated information on the front page of the website, and usually it's accompanied by either a bright pink gun, that was one of them, stop sign, and now I'm waiting. I can't wait to see the next one.
We'll try and hold your attention.
Well, Paul, Chad, thank you so much for your time this morning. This has really been definitely an improvement from the early morning hours that I had. And I'm very, I feel redeemed at this point. I feel, what's absolved? No, what's forgiven? I don't know what the term is, but.
Oh, no, you're just revered, TK, revered. So, thank you.
Well, guys, thank you so much. And with that in mind, we are going to take a bit of a break and then on with Consumer Choice Radio with Yael Osowski. And, thanks again. We'll see you tomorrow right here on The Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad.
Keeping Holden Beach informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. The Humphreys Law Firm is located in Lumina Station, Wilmington, North Carolina, practices civil litigation, intellectual property, commercial, and residential real estate.